Unspoken Social Rules and Etiquette. Uncommon Sense and How to Act. Written by Patrick King. Narrated by Russell Newton. Treat everyone with politeness and kindness. Not because they are nice, but because you are. Nicole Wharton. Chapter 1. Greeting and Introductions. You might think the word etiquette is hideously old-fashioned. In a world that more and more highly prizes individual personal expression and authenticity, it can seem like social rules are an outdated and repressive piece of history we've all moved on from. However, if you're reading this book right now, there's a strong chance you suspect that this is not true and never has been. Human beings are social at their core, but the paradox is that socializing doesn't necessarily come easily or automatically. Enter social rules about how we have all agreed to behave in social situations. True, these rules are never written down or taught at school, and yet we all know they're there, particularly when we break them. In the chapters that follow, we'll not only explore the very real and very important rules that hold this shared social fabric together, but we'll also look at exactly how to put them into practice in a world full of ambiguity, gray area, and imperfect people. Can a person live without all these unspoken social rules? Maybe. But by the end of this book, you may find yourself proving just how much of an advantage you can give yourself by mastering them. Becoming socially adept makes life easier, richer, and far more rewarding. The rules, you'll see, don't restrict human expression and flourishing, but enable it. If you're the kind of person who wants to be more likable, a better communicator, and more skilled at diffusing misunderstandings and conflict, then read on. Every culture on Earth, at every historical period, has unanimously agreed on one thing. At the start of any encounter with another human being, people need to say hello first. The Victorians made a high art of introductions and greetings, placing enormous weight on what was said, how, to whom, and in what order. Today, more relaxed and modern cultures have fewer rules about how to open any social interaction, but there are always rules. This chapter may seem a blindingly obvious place to start, but the sad truth is that many people think they understand this basic fundamental skill and still get it wrong. Their biggest mistake? Simply forgetting to greet at all. Yes, even if you are shy or consider yourself an introvert, are nervous, or are having a bad day. Yes, even if you feel awkward and don't know how. Yes, even if they're the ones being rude first. Every greeting and introduction are a chance to show respect for the other person and give them a good impression of you. There's a reason people say first impressions matter, because they do. But one thing people forget is that first impressions are not just a chance for you to show who you are. They are a chance for you to graciously demonstrate that you are willing to have a good impression of the other person. It's worth dwelling on this point. In ancient times, when humans encountering a stranger was a rare and potentially dangerous situation, the tone they set in those first few seconds made all the difference in the world. The very first task in any social situation is to establish a shared space of mutual respect, understanding, and good intent. You want to communicate that you are good, that they are good, and that you desire for the interaction between you to be good too. It's an act of benevolent civility and good faith. Sure, the person you're meeting at that cocktail party is not likely to be from a warring tribe, and probably won't threaten to kill you with a spear if you offend them. But your first encounter with them is as important as any that our ancient ancestors would have made way back in our deepest history. A greeting acknowledges someone's presence. It also validates their presence. It sets a frame around the conversation you're about to have. Think of it as drawing a special temporary circle around your interaction. Good manners are the human equivalent of the nonverbal rituals animals perform when encountering one another in the wild. Etiquette is not some frilly, arbitrary thing we invented only recently. It is, instead, a natural progression from our earliest instincts for preservation, belonging, survival, and connection. Not greeting a friend can cause hurt feelings and misunderstandings because you're not acknowledging their presence. In other words, it will feel like an insult because it is. Neglecting proper greetings is akin to ignoring someone's most basic needs for inclusion and social belonging. Not greeting a stranger carries obvious connotations. You are deliberately choosing not to draw that temporary circle, not to put down your metaphorical weapons, and not to make any gesture toward knowing them or including them in your social sphere, i.e., letting them remain a potential enemy and outsider. Proper greetings and introductions can seem inconsequential, but if you get them wrong, they can literally color the rest of your entire relationship with that person. Seems like a pretty big deal when you think about it. Greetings. There are two types of greetings. Informal greetings. Informal greetings can be spoken or gestured. Hello and hi are classic greetings, while hey is popular in some regions. A name and a smile usually accompany the greeting. Some regions hold on to a degree of formality and still say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Children and teens have greeting norms of their own, but it's wise not to emulate them since they're usually too informal or else will alienate most people. Formal greetings. Sometimes a formal greeting is needed. In business, coworkers may be casual but defer to their boss. In a formal receiving line, even those who know each other well shake hands or exchange social kisses, offer a polite comment, then move on. Formal greetings use hello instead of hi or hey. Consider tone and posture. These greetings are usually brief, but always friendly and genuine. Etiquette guides will labor the difference between these two types, but perhaps more important than this is the thing they have in common: authenticity, presence, and intention. Whether formal or informal, a greeting should be a deliberate pause and an intentional nod to acknowledge other people. It cannot be rushed or assumed to be unnecessary. It's always necessary. The next time you greet someone, take the time to deliberately pause. Even a few seconds is enough, and really immerse yourself in conveying complete warmth for that moment. This moment of deliberation and presence is the heart of the greeting. If you get this right, every other blunder will likely be forgiven. Keep the following in mind. When you rise to greet someone who's just entered the room, you show respect. As a rule, stand whenever you can. This holds true when greeting someone older than you, someone you're meeting for the first time, or someone who is traditionally shown social respect, such as a religious leader or a person of high social rank. Always shake hands with eye contact. If you extend your hand and the other person doesn't, assume they didn't see it, drop it, and forget the shake. Please note that shaking hands is very culturally embedded. Not all cultures follow this tradition, so pause a moment to take a read on what others are doing first if you're unsure. Kissing, hugging, and other affectionate gestures can be used to greet your family members or close friends. Be wary of using this kind of greeting for casual acquaintances, as it may cause discomfort. On the other hand, if someone unexpectedly greets you this way, roll with it. So, to quickly conclude, a great greeting consists of a deliberate moment of warmth and presence. Smile, acknowledge the other person, and try to convey a genuine feeling of henceforth sharing a mutual space together. The etiquette rules are there to create a certain shared emotional experience. Focus on that feeling and it will be far easier to know what to do. Introductions. There are many rules about how to introduce people, but the only mistake that can't be made up for is when people who don't know each other don't introduce themselves. Ordering mistakes, misspelled words, and mispronunciations are not as rude as expecting people to be friendly with each other when they don't know who the other people are. If you've ever felt yourself in this cringe-inducing situation, you'll know what a kindness it is for someone to spare you from it. The goal of the introduction is twofold. First, they help people learn each other's names. Second, they make strangers feel more at ease and comfortable. If you make a mistake, the best thing to do is keep going, smoothing it over with a smile as quickly as you can. Stopping in the middle to fix it and drawing attention to the error will just make everyone confused. Here are some introduction basics. First, always introduce yourself in new situations, whether it's a chance meeting for a few seconds or a business dinner lasting several hours. When you introduce yourself first, you establish control of the meeting or encounter and demonstrate initiative and an ability to be direct, all pluses in a business situation. Some people feel that an introduction is embarrassing or will come across too forced. The opposite is true, though, and there's far more awkwardness caused later on when you hurry into conversation without one. Without that shared circle being cast, misunderstandings can happen quickly. Always state your name clearly and offer something about yourself. For example, you might say, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Doe. I'm Harry Smith from Atlas Motors." Or, "I'm Kelly. I went to school with your brother." In more formal or professional situations, always introduce from the bottom up. That is, the lesser authority is always introduced to the higher authority by saying the higher authority's name first. For example, a junior executive should be introduced to a senior executive. Similarly, a company executive should be introduced to a client. This is a small but subtle point that will be registered even if people aren't sure what they're noticing. Clients and customers are always considered more important than someone in your firm, even if the client has a lower rank than your colleague. For example, "Miss Higher Authority, I'd like to introduce Mr. Lesser Authority from our legal department." Miss Higher Authority is the Vice President of Human Resources. Always highlight the company or position of the individuals you're introducing, and if appropriate, include pertinent information about each. For example, you might say, "Mark Stevens, I'd like to introduce John Doe. He's the Senior Vice President of ABC Cell Phones and the person to call if you need anything related to cellular phones. John, Mark is President of Stevens Associates, the best PR firm in the country for promoting products." A descriptive introduction eliminates the inevitable silence that often follows as unfamiliar individuals try to guess what the other does or whether they have anything in common. By providing the information, you put each individual at ease and establish an opening for conversation. The highest-ranking person typically introduces everyone else. The regional manager is introduced to the CEO, then the branch manager, etc. If a client is present, they're introduced first. Always use a person's first and last name and appropriate title when introducing them. Even a close friend of yours shouldn't be introduced to others by first name only. Only children have first names. If you're ever unsure, err on the side of formality and go with second names until being explicitly invited, i.e., don't ask, to use first names. In less formal situations, consider the context. Who is above whom in the hierarchy can be a subtle thing, but pay it some attention. If a child is visiting an as yet unmet family member in their home, for example, introduce the child to the family member. If the family member is coming to visit the child in their home, however, it may feel more appropriate to introduce the relation to the child. Whether the situation is business or pleasure, formal or not, it's always good etiquette to follow with something that either of the introduced parties can grab hold of so they're not left hanging, trying to think of how to get the conversation going. This is Jim. He's also a bit of a film buff, so I'm sure you both will have lots to talk about. Finally, always stand for introductions, no exceptions. This goes for both men and women, and for both business and social occasions. Well, let's now consider what not to do. Never give yourself an honorific, such as, I'm Miss Doe, or I'm Dr. Doe. It's like drinking a toast to oneself. And never assume intimacy just because you've been introduced. When you meet someone for the first time, you should continue to call him or her by his or her title and last name until invited to be on a first-name basis. Never meet people. When introducing people, the proper wording is, Mr. Doe, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Joe, and not, Mr. Doe, I'd like you to meet Mr. Joe. Try not to respond to an introduction with just hi or hello. When responding to an introduction, you should always repeat the name of the person you're meeting, i.e., hello, Mrs. Martin. Adding a courtesy statement such as, I've been looking forward to meeting you, is always appreciated. Smile. Focus on that feeling of warmth, rapport, and respect, and take your cues from others if you're unsure. This has been Unspoken Social Rules and Etiquette, Uncommon Sense and How to Act, written by Patrick King, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2023 by Patrick King. Production copyright by Patrick King.